February 1st, 1924. Detroit, Michigan, 8 o'clock in the morning. The air temperature reads minus 12 degrees Celsius. Wind from Lake Erie cuts straight through. Yet within the mansion at 70 West Boston Boulevard, the cold feels entirely different. This isn't winter's cold. This is the cold of absolute calculated finality. Massive oak doors adorned with hand-carved details open not to welcome guests, but to release the house's master. On the threshold stands Sebastian Spearing Kresge. He's 56 years old. He's one of America's wealthiest people, the retail trade king, the man whose name adorns hundreds of stores nationwide. He carries no small change in his pocket. He's known for not carrying extra money with him, fearing he might lose it. But in his briefcase lie documents that have just destroyed his personal life with the same efficiency his business destroyed competitors. Behind him remains a mansion spanning over 1,400 square meters, 14 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, walls paneled with rare Circassian walnut. This is a house that was supposed to become his dynasty's monument, a stronghold where his lineage would rule for centuries. Instead, the house has transformed into the world's most expensive storage room for shattered hopes. A moment later, the doors close. The locks click, sounds like a gunshot in the elite Boston Edison district's silence. Kresge gets into the waiting car. He doesn't look back. At this moment, while the car's engine disturbs the morning silence, in Wayne County Court, clerks are preparing to register a deal that will shake the financial world no less than the stock market crash. This isn't a corporate merger, this is a divorce. Anna Harvey, the woman who lived with him for more than 20 years, receives alimony. The amount specified in the agreement defies that era's average person's imagination, $10 million. To understand this figure's scale, it needs translating into reality's language. In 1924, the average American family's annual income was about $1,500. A Ford Model T car cost $290, $10 million. This is a small state's budget. This is the amount on which 3 skyscrapers could be built. And Sebastian Kresge, the man who economized on lunches by choosing 30-cent soup, the man who wore his shoes until the soles were worn through with holes, has just given away that money so as never to see again the woman who remained behind the mansion's doors. Newspapers the next day will come out with screaming headlines. Reporters will call it the century's divorce. They'll savor every detail: the magnate's detachment, Anna's tears, their 5 children's fate. But none of them will write about the main thing. No one will notice that the real drama played out not in the courtroom, but in the house's architecture itself. This mansion on Boston Boulevard wasn't just a residence place. It was a physical manifestation of Kresge's inner conflict. On the outside, a majestic Mediterranean palace shouting about status and wealth. Inside, a regime of the strictest economy where lights were turned off at a strictly set time and every expense required written justification. The house became the crime scene where the victim wasn't a physical body, but the very idea of family. Kresge built happiness as perfect scenery, but forgot to include humanity in the budget. On that February morning, as his car's tires crunched on the snow, moving away from the estate, naive accumulation's era ended. The world learned that everything has a price, even loneliness. And Sebastian Kresge's loneliness's price amounted to exactly $10 million and 1 lost palace. This isn't a story about money. Money here is just decoration, like the mansion's ceiling stucco. This is a story about a man who learned to sell cheap goods to millions of people, but never managed to sell happiness idea to his own family. This is a thriller about how thrift transforms into pathology, and stone walls, meant to protect, begin to suffocate. Kresge's marriage collapse wasn't accidental. It was a pattern laid in the very foundation on which his empire stood. To understand how a man can build a business worth hundreds of millions and simultaneously destroy his home from the inside, we need to rewind the timeline. We need to leave snowy Detroit of the 1920s and transport ourselves to a completely different place, to where dirt, labor, and religion mixed into an explosive mixture, shaping the future Titan's character. We're heading to Pennsylvania at the 19th century's end, to a world where every cent wasn't just a coin, but a survival question. It was there among farms and stern sermons that the very demon was conceived which 50 years later would drive Sebastian Kresge out of his own home. Look closely at this receding car. Sitting in it isn't just a businessman. Sitting in it is a man who's just made his life's most unprofitable deal, but is convinced he won. Fate's irony is that the $10 million were only the first payment. The real reckoning was still ahead. July 31st, 1867. Deep Pennsylvania province, Bald Mount Settlement. There's no electricity here, no paved roads, and the silence is broken only by church bells ringing and cattle's lowing. On this day, in Sebastian and Catherine Kresge's family, a boy is born. He's named Sebastian Spearing. But the world will remember him not by name, but by the initials that will become synonymous with American trade. S.S. Kresge. To understand why this man half a century later would drive his wife out of the palace for economy's sake, one needs to look at the land on which he took his first steps. This is Pennsylvania Germans' territory, a harsh aesthetic environment. Here labor isn't a way to earn money, but the only prayer form that God hears. Idleness here is considered a sin bordering on crime. Little Sebastian grows up in an atmosphere where emotions are suppressed and the farm's account books are valued higher than artistic literature. His worldview is formed not in the school classroom, but at the apiary. This is the key psychological moment that biographers often overlook, but which explains everything. In his youth, Kresge takes on the bee's care. For an ordinary child, this is a dangerous game. For Kresge, this is the first encounter with society's ideal model. He observes the hive for hours. He sees a system where there's no individuality, where each bee is simply a functional unit working to exhaustion for the colony's benefit. If a bee stops producing honey, it dies or is expelled. Pity is absent. Efficiency is absolute. Later, managing thousands of employees, Kresge will subconsciously reproduce this hive model. People for him will become the same bees, useful as long as they produce honey and replaceable when their resource is exhausted. In 1886, at age 19, Sebastian does what distinguishes a dreamer from a strategist. He begins teaching at Grover Elementary School. His salary is $22 monthly, a paltry sum even by 19th century standards. But Kresge doesn't spend a single cent on entertainment. He walks 5 or 6 kilometers on foot to avoid wearing out his shoes on rocky roads, removing his boots where the grass is soft. This isn't poverty. This is total control over resources. Every saved cent for him is a brick in a future's foundation that no one else sees yet. But Kresge's ambitions don't fit into a rural school. He understands to beat the system, one must know its language, money's language. In 1889, he makes a risky decision. He takes his savings and enrolls in the Eastman Business College in Poughkeepsie, New York. This is his first investment. He's not buying goods, he's buying thinking algorithms. There, he learns not just to count, but to see invisible capital flows. After graduating from college, Kresge doesn't seek easy paths. He becomes a traveling salesman. For 5 years, he travels across the USA's Northeast selling hardware and tinware. Imagine this job. Dusty trains, cheap hotels, hundreds of rejections daily. But these 5 years become his real university. Entering hundreds of small shops, he sees the same picture everywhere. Chaos, goods piled in heaps, prices depending on the seller's mood, accounting done on paper scraps. He sees the market's massive inefficiency. It's on these trips that he meets the man who changes everything, Frank Woolworth. By that time, Woolworth has already launched the revolutionary concept of 5 and 10-cent stores. The idea was simple to the point of genius. All goods cost a fixed paltry amount. No haggling. A buyer can enter and buy an item without feeling poor. Kresge, as Woolworth's supplier, sees the numbers. He sees how mountains of cheap tinware turn into mountains of gold through volume. In his head, that very calculator clicks on, never to turn off again. He understands the future isn't in exclusivity. The future is in mass production. The future is in cheapness. By 1897, Kresge manages to save $8,000. In modern money terms, this is about $250,000, a colossal sum for a farmer's son. This money is a decade of deprivation's result. He could have bought a farm, built a house, lived quietly, but instead he goes all in. He finds a partner, John McCrory, and proposes a deal. They open 2 stores, one in Memphis, the other in Detroit. Detroit's choice in 1899 is a manifestation of Kresge's supernatural intuition. Detroit hasn't yet become Motor City in the full sense. Henry Ford is only preparing for his breakthrough, but the city is already vibrating with energy. Thousands of workers, immigrants, people flow here, those who need to set up their lives from scratch. This is Kresge's ideal audience, people who have only coins jingling in their pockets. But there are many of them, very many. Kresge moves to Detroit to personally manage the store, and here his philosophy comes into action. He's not just a seller, he's orders fanatic. In his store, goods lie like soldiers in formation. Light falls in such a way that cheap glass sparkles like diamonds. Price tags are written large and clearly, 10 cents. No surprises. For Detroit's working class accustomed to deception and neglect, Kresge's store becomes honesty's temple. You give a dime, 10 cents, you get the item, a simple, honest exchange. But behind this affordability facade hides harsh, cold calculation. Kresge starts a war on costs. He economizes on everything except expansion. He works 18 hours daily. He personally checks electricity bills. He knows every nail's cost in the counter. His social conflict is obvious. He fights against old money, against the elite that despises selling knickknacks. He wants to prove that on trash one can earn more than on gold. He's an outsider, a man with a hard German accent in business who doesn't recognize social soirees. His religion is Methodism, but his true God is efficiency. He bans alcohol, condemns smoking, despises luxury for luxury's sake. He builds himself as the perfect money-making machine. But in this mechanism, there's a fatal flaw. The machine doesn't know how to love. The machine doesn't know how to empathize. By the 20th century's beginning, Sebastian Kresge stands on the threshold of retail history's greatest rise. He buys out his partner's share. Now, he's the sole owner. The sign SS Kresge Company lights up above the entrance. He's ready to conquer America. But he doesn't yet know that the very fanaticism that allowed him to rise from Pennsylvania mud will become the tool that destroys his personal happiness. He learned to control prices, supplies, and personnel. Now he'll decide that he can control living people whom he calls his family in exactly the same way. The scene is set. The hero is defined. His weapon is cheap goods and iron will. His weakness is complete empathy's lack. Ahead lies a meeting with the woman who was supposed to become his empire's jewel, but became its loudest accuser. Detroit roars. Factories launch conveyor belts, and Kresge begins building not just a business but a prison for his loved ones, the bars of which will be cast from pure gold. 1897, Memphis, Tennessee. Sebastian Kresge makes his next strategic move. This time, it isn't a store's opening or a goods batch's purchase. It's marriage. He meets Anna Emma Harvey. Anna is unlike the women the stern Pennsylvanian is used to dealing with. A wealthy lawyer's daughter, she grew up in a world where money was spent, not hidden under the mattress. She's young, full of life, and sees in the 30-year-old Kresge not just a trifles peddler, but a man with an empire's potential. For Sebastian, this union is also a calculation. In the late 19th century's business world, a bachelor raises suspicions. A reliable family man inspires creditors' confidence. This is a merger of two capitals, his furious energy and her social status. They marry on December 19th. The contract is signed, but neither of them suspects they're signing a mutual destruction pact that will last 27 years. Let us fast forward to 1912. The world is changing at a frightening speed. The Titanic goes down, but Kresge's business becomes unsinkable. In this year, an event occurs that turns a merely rich shopkeeper into a financial giant. The SS Kresge Company is officially registered in Delaware State. Shares go public on the stock exchange. The figures are staggering. 85 stores, annual sales volume $10,300,000. In today's exchange rate, this is almost $300 million in revenue. Kresge no longer needs to stand behind the counter. He becomes a corporation's president whose capitalization grows faster than oil prices. It's here, at financial power's peak, that a fatal psychological shift occurs. Kresge moves to Detroit permanently. The city at this moment is the universe's center. Henry Ford launches the assembly line. The Dodge brothers, the Fisher brothers, America's new kings, are building their castles. Detroit of 1914 is the 21st century's Dubai. It's a place where ambitions are measured in marble tons and land hectares. Sebastian Kresge looks at his neighbors. Henry Ford lives on the neighboring street. Magnates build palaces to show the world their greatness. Kresge, despite his pathological stinginess, understands he cannot live in a shack. He needs a symbol. He needs a headquarters. He needs a house that will silence those who call him the cheapness king. He chooses a plot, and not just any plot. He buys the largest residential lot in the elite Boston Edison district. Address: 70 West Boston Boulevard. 4 acres of land in the city center. This is a statement. This is a challenge. Construction begins in 1914. While World War I is flaring up in Europe and Detroit, an architect's battle is igniting. Kresge hires the best but controls their every step. He approves a project in Mediterranean revival style. This is a strange choice for cold Michigan. White stuccoed walls, red tile roof, Italian motifs. The house is supposed to look like an Amalfi Coast villa teleported into America's industrial heart. But here begins the paradox that will become this house's curse. Kresge builds a palace, but thinks like a foreman on a shed's construction. Workers testify the millionaire personally checks cement's used amount. He demands reports on every nail. He wants grandeur at wholesale prices. Anna Harvey watches this process with growing horror. For her, this house was supposed to be high society's entry. She dreams of balls, receptions, formal dinners where she'll shine as Detroit's queen. She sees spacious halls in the blueprints and imagines music and laughter there. Sebastian sees the same blueprints as an asset that must appreciate in value. For him, a hall isn't a dancing place. It's square footage that needs heating. By construction's completion time, conflict's foundation is already laid in the house. This isn't two worlds' merger, as Anna hoped. This is two galaxies' clash. Old money's world, or the aspiration to it, which Anna represents, is a world where wealth serves comfort. Kresge's world is a one-man Puritan sect where wealth serves only accumulation. The house grows. 3 stories, 15,000 square feet. A multi-car garage above which are staff apartments, greenhouses, gardens. From the outside, it looks like the American dream's triumph. A second-generation immigrant, a farmer's son, has built his Versailles. Detroit newspapers write about the mansion with bated breath. They call it Boston Edison's jewel. But let us look inside while the paint is still fresh. The house's structure is designed to divide, not unite. Huge spaces, long corridors. The spouses' rooms are in different wings. No, they're nearby. But the psychological distance between them is already measured in miles. Kresge introduces his rules into the house, which isn't even occupied yet. These are wartime rules in peacetime. Anna learns that having a palace doesn't mean having freedom. On the contrary, the bigger the house, the bigger the prison. Quote 0 asks Kresge, looking at the staff schedule. Quote 1 replies, Anna. In this dialogue lies the impending tragedy's essence. Kresge builds a housing machine. Anna wants a home hearth. It's important to understand the era's context. The jazz era is dawning. Women begin cutting their hair shorter. Skirts become higher. Morals freer. Anna wants to be part of this new bright world. She's one of the planet's richest people's wife. She has a right to luxury. But her husband is stuck in Pennsylvania, 1867. He despises fashion. He hates jazz. He considers parties a calories waste. The moment the Kresge family first crosses the mansion's threshold on West Boston Boulevard, the trap snaps shut. Shiny parquet, marble staircases, crystal chandeliers. All this becomes scenery for the decade's most expensive family drama. Kresge thinks he built a fortress that will protect his capital and family from the outside world. He doesn't understand that he locked the most dangerous enemy inside the walls. That enemy is himself. The house is ready. It's magnificent. It's cold. It costs millions. And in its huge echoing halls, footsteps echo. Sounds like a time bomb's countdown. The retail empire is at its peak. But the Kresge family empire begins to crack, cracks that can no longer be covered with plaster. Anna Harvey enters her golden cage, and the key turns in the lock. Let us enter inside. Crossing the mansion's threshold on West Boston Boulevard isn't just entering a living space. It's a journey into a man's mind's labyrinth who turned asceticism into art's most expensive form. From the street, the house looks like a monolith. White plaster, red tiles, Mediterranean-style strict symmetry. It looks like a fortress protecting its inhabitants from industrial Detroit's chaos. But as soon as the heavy oak doors close behind you, you find yourself in a space that architects called a masterpiece, and the Kresge family, a golden prison. The first thing that hits visitors' senses is the silence. In a house of almost 1,500 square meters where 7 people and servant staff live, there's an unnatural vacuum-like silence. The hall floors are laid with marble brought from Europe. Every step on this stone echoes with a resonant boom that seems to be heard in every building corner. This is a cathedral's acoustics, not a home's. Here, one wants to speak in whispers. Here, it's scary to drop a spoon. This is exactly the effect Sebastian Kresge was aiming for. His house was supposed to inspire awe, not coziness. We proceed to the main hall. The gaze inevitably falls on the wall paneling. This isn't just wood. This is the rarest Circassian walnut. In 1914, such paneling's cost was equivalent to several good suburban houses' price. The wood's texture is dark, deep, complex. It absorbs light, creating perpetual twilight's atmosphere even on a sunny day. This is Kresge's paradox embodied in material. He spent a fortune on wood to save on lighting. The lamps in this house are turned on strictly as needed. If there's no one in the room, there must be darkness there. Servants who violate this rule risk instant dismissal. To the hall's left was the music room. Anna Harvey dreamed that a grand piano would stand here, played by the city's best musicians. She imagined laughter here, champagne glasses clink, silk dresses rustle. The grand piano does indeed stand there, but it's silent. Sebastian Kresge, a strict Methodist, doesn't approve of frivolous music, and alcohol is categorically prohibited in this house. The music room has turned into a museum exhibit. Furniture in Louis XIV style is arranged with geometric precision. There are no creases on the velvet seats because no one sits on them. This space is created to be looked at, not to be lived in. We move further to the mansion's heart, the dining room, a massive redwood table capable of seating 20 people. Above it looms a massive crystal chandelier, each pendant of which costs as much as a saleswoman's weekly salary in a Kresge store. But if you look at this table during lunch, you'll see a surreal picture. At the table's head sits a multimillionaire whose fortune grows by thousands of dollars hourly. In front of him is a simple plate of soup or porridge. He chews the food thoroughly, following Fletcher's health nutrition teaching popular in those years, which also allowed getting maximum energy from minimum food, economy at the physiological level. Around him are his wife and 5 children, Stanley, Ruth, Howard, Anna, and Catherine. They eat in silence under the father's watchful eye, who can start an interrogation over too much butter spread on bread. The decor's grandeur only emphasizes the emotional diet's poverty, but the most important room in this house is hidden from casual guests' eyes. To understand Sebastian Kresge's soul, one needs to go up to the 2nd floor and enter his office. There's an object that turns this mansion into a unique psychological portrait. This isn't a library with rare books. This isn't an art gallery. This is a bank vault, a real armored steel bank vault built right into the living house's structure. It has a heavy round door with a combination lock whose mechanism works with a soft, oily click. This isn't a safe. This is a walk-in vault. Here among the shelves, Kresge stores what he truly loves: accounting books, profit reports, cash money, and property ownership documents. When nighttime Detroit falls asleep, Kresge doesn't go to his wife's bedroom, he goes to this vault. He opens the heavy door and locks himself inside with his numbers. This is his sanctuary. Here, surrounded by cold steel and paper, he feels safe. Here, there are no unpredictable emotions from Anna, noisy children, no society's demands. Here, there's only debit and credit, and they always balance. The vault in the family nest's center is a metaphor turned into concrete and steel. The house's heart is money, and the people living in the other 14 bedrooms are merely temporary tenants whose presence must be economically justified. Let us go higher. Bedrooms, 14 rooms. Each has its own bathroom, an unheard-of luxury. At the time, when even in rich houses, one bathroom often served a floor. The plumbing is made of the best materials. Faucets shine with nickel and brass. But water is a resource. Hot water usage is controlled. Children grow up understanding that a long shower is wastefulness's sin. The house has 9 fireplaces. They're lined with marble, adorned with elegant carving, but fire is lit in them rarely. Firewood costs money. Central heating runs at minimum. In winter, a damp cold prevails in the huge halls. Family members walk in sweaters inside a $1 million palace. Kresge believes that cold tempers character and is good for health. Anna freezes. She freezes not only physically, but also spiritually. Every cold fireplace is a reminder that warmth in this house isn't provided for by the design. The territory around the house deserves separate attention. 4 acres of land in the city center. Gardens designed by landscape architects resemble European monarchs' parks. Perfectly trimmed bushes, geometrically precise paths, fountains. But this garden isn't a play place. Children are forbidden to run on the lawns so as not to ruin the grass. The trees here aren't for climbing, but to create shade and status. Kresge can often be seen walking along these paths. He walks quickly, his gaze fixed on the ground. He looks for weeds, he looks for imperfections, he looks for lost coins. Even on his own land, he remains an inspector. The mansion on West Boston Boulevard was conceived as Triumph's symbol. It was supposed to tell the world, look what the farm boy has achieved. And it does say that, but it also whispers another more terrifying story. This is the story of how a personality's scale can be overwhelmed by one's own creation's scale. The house turned out so grandiose that there was no room left in it for simple human happiness. The hall's proportions are calculated for giants, and the people living in them feel smaller and more insignificant with each year. The walls that were supposed to whisper stories are silent. Mirrors brought from Venice reflect not happy faces, but the departing husband's back and the wife's sad face who's aging in a golden cage. The furniture smells not of centuries but of polish and the fear of damaging something. By 1923, this architectural masterpiece has finally transformed into a battlefield. Anna Harvey can no longer see beauty in the ceiling stucco. She sees bars in it. She understands that every dollar invested in this stone was stolen from her emotional life. Fate's irony, Kresge built a house that will stand for centuries, He used the best materials to ensure eternity, but he didn't account for the fact that marriage is a structure requiring a different kind of cement. And while he was checking electricity bills, his family's foundation had already turned to sand. The house stood firm. The family was crumbling. And soon these walls will witness how the mistress, for whom all this was supposedly built, will present a bill that will make even Kresge's steel bank vault shudder. The calendar shows 1923. Outside the mansion's windows on West Boston Boulevard, the roaring 20s are roaring. The jazz era reaches its peak. Women throw off corsets, smoke long cigarettes, dance the Charleston, and for the first time in history, sit behind cars' wheels. America is drunk on freedom and money, but inside the Kresge house, time has stopped somewhere in the mid-19th century. Here reigns Puritan morals' eternal winter, and it's here, at two eras' junction, that real human tragedy unfolds, scarier than any bankruptcy. Anna Harvey, the woman who gave Sebastian 25 years of her life and bore him 5 children, is on a breakdown's verge. The outside world sees her as the retail empire's queen. Newspaper reporters describe her public appearances, envying her status. But no one sees what happens when the bedroom doors close. Anna lives in a regime of total financial and emotional blockade. This isn't a story of physical violence. Sebastian Kresge never raised a hand to his wife. His weapon was more terrible. Indifference and humiliating control's weapon. Imagine the situation. A multi-millionaire's wife, whose fortune is valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, is forced to ask her husband for money for a pair of stockings. And not just ask, but justify the purchase's necessity. Kresge demands receipts. He checks the change. If Anna buys something he considers an extravagance, for example a hat slightly more expensive than usual, a lecture on wastefulness's sin follows, which can last for hours. Here arises a deep moral conflict that makes the viewer doubt. After all, Kresge doesn't spend money on himself. He wears the same suit for years. He stuffs cardboard into worn-out shoes so as not to buy new ones. Can one condemn a man for demanding the same from his family that he follows himself? Is he a tyrant or simply a principled ascetic whom his luxury-spoiled loved ones don't understand? However, the line between thrift and pathology was crossed long ago. Anna's humiliation becomes public at charity evenings where Detroit's elite gathers: Fords, Dodges, Firestones. Sebastian Kresge looks like a poor relative. Anna sees the sympathetic glances from other wives. She sees how they whisper behind their backs. For a woman of her circle and upbringing, this is torture. She's locked in a golden cage where the bars are made not of going-out prohibitions, but of the impossibility of matching her status without feeling guilty. But Anna's tragedy is exacerbated by the children's presence. Stanley Kresge, their eldest son, will later write in his memoirs about the heavy shadow cast by his father. Sebastian perceives the children as investment projects. He doesn't give them warmth. He gives them instructions. He fears that wealth will spoil them, so he keeps them in artificial poverty. The children see how their peers live, whose fathers work at Kresge factories, and understand the paradox. The workers live more cheerfully and freely than the empire's owners' children. In the huge house with 14 bedrooms, an emotional vacuum reigns. It's at this moment that a variable appears in the equation that changes everything. This isn't just Anna's fatigue. This is a rival's appearance, but not in the banal sense as it happens in cheap novels. Sebastian Kresge, being a pragmatist to the bone, begins to understand. Anna has broken. She no longer performs the ideal obedient wife's function. She demands, she cries, she's dissatisfied. For Kresge, this means the asset has become toxic. On the horizon appears Doris Mercer. She's Anna's complete opposite. Young, vibrant, ambitious social lioness from New York. She's a little over 30. She's that very jazz era's embodiment that Kresge supposedly despises. But here, the classic midlife crisis mechanism kicks in, multiplied by unlimited power. Kresge, who spent his whole life posing as a saintly ascetic, suddenly finds himself enchanted by the sparkle he can buy. Doris is a trophy. Anna is a hard past's reminder, and the farm. For Anna, this becomes the last straw. She realizes the terrible truth. Her thriftiness, her sacrifices, her submission over a quarter-century weren't appreciated. They were simply used. She was a free manager of his household, an incubator for his heirs, and his peace's guardian. Now when her resource is exhausted, they're preparing to write her off like obsolete equipment. Here occurs the heroine's transformation. From victim, she turns into avenger. But her revenge will be served cold in the language her husband understands best, money's language. Anna doesn't throw hysterics with dishes breaking. She goes to lawyers. In 1923, divorce is still a stigma. Divorce for a woman of her status is social suicide. But Anna goes for it. She understands she has nothing to lose except chains forged from the purest gold. In the lawsuit filed in court, words sound that destroy the pious businessman's image: cruelty and humiliation. This isn't physical cruelty. This is a man's cruelty who loves numbers more than people. Anna's lawyers present the bill. They demand half. They demand recognition of the fact that the Kresge empire was built on the rear that Anna provided. Sebastian Kresge is furious, not because he's losing a beloved woman. He's furious because someone is encroaching on his capital. For him, this isn't a family tragedy, but a hostile takeover. He tries to bargain. He offers less. He uses all his influence to hush up the scandal, but the press has already smelled blood. The 10-cents king turns out to be a miserly knight who starves his family with cold in his own palace. Moral ambivalence reaches its peak. We see a great man, a jobs creator, a philanthropist. Kresge is already beginning to donate money to charity, who in his personal life turns out to be indifference's monster. The viewer wonders, what's success's price? Is it necessary to kill everything human in oneself to build an empire of such scale? By 1923's end, the atmosphere in the house on West Boston Boulevard becomes unbearable. Servants walk on tiptoe. Children hide in their rooms. Sebastian and Anna meet only in the dining room, and this silent dinner is scarier than any quarrel. The air is electrified with hatred. The house, built as eternity's monument, is preparing to expel its creators. Anna makes the final decision. She'll leave, but she'll leave in such a way that her departure will enter history textbooks. She'll make Kresge pay for every saved cent, for every cold glance, for every lonely evening in the huge living room. $10 million. This isn't just an amount. This is a fine for inhumanity. The scene is set for the finale. The judge raises the gavel. Kresge takes out his checkbook. At this moment, not only the marriage collapses, the myth collapses that with money one can buy everything, including obedience. It turns out that obedience has an expiration date, and when it expires, contract extension's price becomes astronomical. Sebastian Kresge, a trade genius, made his life's biggest mistake. He forgot that in family life, there are no discounts. The events following the check's signing for $10 million resemble a train wreck in slow motion. It would seem that losing such an astronomical sum and public humiliation should have made Sebastian Kresge stop and rethink his life. But the tragedy of people of such scale lies in their inability to admit mistakes. Instead of looking for collapse's reasons within himself, Kresge tries to reboot family happiness's script with a new actress, hoping that this time the production will be successful. In the same 1924, as soon as the ink on the divorce documents with Anna has time to dry, Kresge marries Doris Mercer. This act isn't a love act, but a business stubbornness act. He seems to want to prove to the world and his ex-wife that the problem wasn't in his stinginess, but in the wrong partner. Doris is young, beautiful, and as Kresge believes, will be grateful for access to his empire. But this marriage becomes an even more catastrophic failure than the first. If Anna Harvey endured strict economy's regime for 25 years, hardened by 19th century upbringing, then Doris Mercer, a jazz-era child, doesn't last even 4 years. She doesn't intend to live in a golden cage and account for lipstick's purchase. The conflict flares up instantly. Kresge again tries to apply his beehive formula. Everyone works, no one spends, but encounters a reality he cannot control. 1928, another court, another scandal. Doris files for divorce. The script repeats with frightening accuracy. Only this time, everything happens faster and more cynically. Kresge is forced to pay again. Freedom's price from the second attempt to build happiness is $3 million. In total, over 4 years, personal life cost America's most thrifty man $13 million. In modern terms, that's hundreds of millions. It's at this moment, at the 1920s end, that a real internal turning point occurs. Kresge is left alone. The mansion on West Boston Boulevard, his greatest creation, no longer belongs to him. By fate's irony and the first divorce's terms, Anna stayed to live there. She remarried and now lives in his palace with another man, enjoying the warmth that Kresge refused to pay for. Sebastian Kresge finds himself in existential vacuum situation. He's 61 years old. He has money, but no home. He has an empire, but no heir ready to unconditionally accept his philosophy. The children from Anna have distanced themselves from their father. His world's model built on accumulation has cracked. He realizes that the money he so fiercely protected from his own family brought him nothing but loneliness. Then a transformation occurs that changes the entire story's meaning. If Kresge cannot control living people, wives, children, he decides to control eternity itself. He changes strategy. Instead of meaningless accumulation, strategic giving's era begins. Already in 1924, parallel to the first marriage's collapse, he established the Kresge Foundation. Initially, it was a way to optimize taxes and protect capital. But after the second divorce, and on the Great Depression's eve, the foundation becomes a surrogate family for him. Kresge invests $65 million in it. This is a paradox that defies comprehension. A man who refused to pay for taxes and walked on foot in the rain gives away a gigantic fortune for humanity's abstract benefit. Why does he do this? It's not sentimentality. It's the same power thirst, but transferred to another level. By giving money to the foundation, he ensures his name will remain in history clean, washed from divorce scandals. He builds a monument that's more reliable than the mansion on Boston Boulevard. The mansion can be taken away in a divorce. The foundation cannot be taken away. Then comes 1929, stock market crash, Great Depression. America plunges into poverty. Bankers jump out of windows. Factories stand idle. But the Kresge empire prospers in total poverty's conditions. 5 and 10 cent stores become the only place where Americans can afford purchases. Kresge's profits grow while the country starves. This contrast finally shapes his new image. In society's eyes, he's no longer the miserly knight who drove away his wife. He's a titan who gives people cheap goods and donates millions to hospitals and universities through his foundation. The money that was cursed within the family mansion's walls upon going out becomes blessed. Kresge moves to a farm in Pennsylvania, returning to his roots. He lives there almost like a monk. He rises at dawn, works with bees, prays. He renounces wealth's attributes that destroyed his life. But this isn't a saint's humility. This is defeat's admission in the attempt to be like everyone else. He realized he's not made for love, comfort, and family dinners. He's made only for function, for work, for serving the mechanism. At the same time, a transformation occurs in his children as well, especially in his son Stanley. Having grown up in the cold mansion, Stanley didn't become embittered. On the contrary, he takes over the Kresge Foundation's management. He turns his father's money, accumulated through harshness and deprivations, into real help's tool. Stanley becomes that very bridge between the father's dead capital and living people. Childhood's tragedy in the golden cage sublimates into a desire to save others from suffering. The mansion on West Boston Boulevard stands in these years as a silent witness to this metamorphosis. Lights still burn in it, but now it's a different life's light. Anna Harvey, freed from her husband's tyranny, finally fills the house with what was missing during Sebastian's time: life's sounds, guests, warmth. The house stops being a bank vault and becomes simply a home, but Kresge's shadow doesn't disappear. It moves from physical space to financial and social space. The late 1920s crisis taught Sebastian Kresge the main lesson. Wealth that doesn't serve an idea becomes poison. He couldn't save his marriage, but decided to save his name. He transformed from property's owner into legacy's architect. But this wisdom's price turned out to be monstrous. He had to lose everyone he should have loved in order to love all of humanity. The story approaches its finale, but one question remains. Is the old man rummaging in beehives on his farm happy, knowing his name is carved on libraries' pediments, but his own children remember him with shuddering? Sebastian Kresge transcended his greed, turning it into philanthropy, but he never managed to buy what wasn't sold in his stores, even for 10 cents. Simple human warmth. October 18th, 1966. Sebastian Spearing Kresge takes his last breath. He's 99 years old. He outlived his enemies, his wives, the Jazz era, the Great Depression, and 2 world wars. The man who started by selling tin pots leaves behind an empire of nearly 1,000 stores. But the story doesn't end there. It only acquires its final paradoxical meaning. Kresge's legacy split into 2 streams whose fates are diametrically opposite. The first stream is the business. In 1962, 4 years before the founder's death, the company launches a new format: Kmart discounters. This brand will become American trade symbol in the 20th century. But in the 21st century, it will collapse, unable to withstand competition from Amazon and Walmart. The trading empire that Kresge built, saving every cent, ultimately crumbled to dust. Stores closed, signs removed. The second stream is the Kresge Foundation, those very money that were cleansed through philanthropy. Today, this foundation manages assets worth more than $3 billion. It funds art, education, and medicine. The irony is blinding. What Kresge tried to hold in his fist, business, disappeared. What he gave away, foundation, achieved immortality. His name lives not thanks to stores, but thanks to libraries and universities built with his money. And what about the house? The mansion at 70 West Boston Boulevard still stands. It survived Detroit's decline, riots, and abandonment. Today, it's restored and shines with white plaster again. But for historians and city residents, this building will forever remain a monument not to love, but to history's most expensive miscalculation. It's a monument to the fact that perfect walls can be built, but people cannot be made happy inside them by order. The story of Sebastian Kresge sounds eerily relevant today. We live in the era of new tech billionaires who build bunkers and dream of eternal life, optimizing their existence's every aspect. Kresge was their prototype. He showed that efficiency elevated to the absolute kills life. He proved that a person's net worth in financial reports can be billion-dollar, while his human value to loved ones is zero. In this drama's finale, we return to that check for $10 million. Back then, in 1924, it seemed like a loss, but today, we understand it was payment for enlightenment. Losing family and home forced Kresge to seek meaning beyond his bank vault. Sebastian Kresge taught America to buy cheap, but he himself paid the highest price for understanding a simple truth. Legacy isn't what you accumulated. Legacy is what you gave. And sometimes to understand this, one needs to lose everything except one's money.